The wealthiest person I know checks their bank balance less than you check Instagram. While you're calculating grocery budgets, they're making decisions that would shock you. What mental shift separates their thinking from yours? Here's a belief that's practically baked into our culture: rich people don't worry about money. We see celebrities buying $50,000 handbags without blinking. Tech billionaires dropping millions on space rockets like it's pocket change. The fantasy is simple: get enough money and all your financial stress disappears forever. Well, that's complete nonsense. Surveys of actual millionaires tell a different story. A 2019 study by UBS found that 60% of wealthy investors lose sleep over their finances. These aren't people choosing between rent and groceries. These are folks with seven-figure portfolios still checking their bank accounts at 2 a.m., worried sick about market crashes. The assumption that financial stress only hits poor and middle-class families? Wrong again. Harvard researcher Dr. Robert Waldinger spent decades tracking happiness across income levels. His findings were shocking. Even people earning $500,000 annually reported significant money anxiety. They stressed about taxes, investments, and whether they had enough for retirement. But here's where it gets really weird. Happiness does rise with income, but only to a point. Once you cover basic needs, food, shelter, healthcare, more money barely moves the needle on life satisfaction. Princeton economists found this plateau kicks in around $75,000 annually. Beyond that, diminishing returns hit hard. Then there's what researchers call the wealth paradox. More money often creates more problems, not fewer. Ask any lottery winner. Studies show that within 2 years, most jackpot winners report feeling no happier than before their windfall. Some feel worse. The money solved old problems but created entirely new ones. Family drama, investment pressure, fear of losing it all. Consider this: Warren Buffett, one of the richest humans alive, still clips coupons. He drives a 2014 Cadillac and lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. If wealth eliminated money worry, wouldn't he spend freely? Instead, even billionaires exhibit careful financial behavior that looks suspiciously like worry. The ultra-wealthy face anxieties most people never consider. They stress about preserving wealth across generations. Market volatility that might cost regular investors thousands can cost them millions in a single day. They worry about gold diggers, about their children becoming spoiled, about philanthropy decisions affecting their legacy. And the weird part is, the richest people often live below their means, while broke people live above theirs. Multimillionaires drive 10-year-old cars, while minimum wage workers finance brand new trucks. It's backwards, but it reveals something crucial about human psychology and money. Financial advisors working with high net worth clients report the same pattern repeatedly. Their wealthy clients don't feel wealthy. A person worth $5 million worries they need $10 million to feel secure. Someone with $10 million thinks they need $25 million. The goalpost keeps moving, and the anxiety never fully disappears. This challenges everything we think about money and peace of mind. If becoming rich doesn't eliminate financial worry, what's actually happening when people accumulate wealth? The answer reveals something fascinating about human nature and our relationship with money that goes way deeper than bank account balances. You'd think having millions in the bank would cure money worries forever. Well, here's the kicker: it doesn't. Even billionaires lose sleep over their finances. Sounds ridiculous? Let me explain. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, discovered something fascinating. Rich people don't just worry about money, they often worry more than everyone else. They fear making the wrong investment. They panic about market crashes. They stress about whether their wealth manager is competent or secretly plotting against them. Take billionaires during the 2008 financial crisis. Many of them watched their net worth drop by hundreds of millions overnight. Sure, they still had more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. But guess what? They were absolutely terrified. Some couldn't sleep, others developed anxiety disorders. A few even needed therapy. The wealthy face a unique type of financial stress that regular people never experience. When you have $50 million, losing $10 million feels devastating, even though you're still incredibly rich. It's like being afraid of heights when you're on the 80th floor instead of the 10th. You're still way up there, but the fear hits just as hard. Then there's the pressure that comes with wealth itself. Rich people worry about their kids becoming spoiled brats. They stress about family members asking for money constantly. They lose sleep over whether their friends actually like them or just want access to their cash. These problems don't exist when you're struggling to pay rent, but they're very real when you're wealthy. High earners often live in expensive areas where everyone else is also wealthy. A software engineer making $200,000 might feel broke in San Francisco because a decent house costs $2 million. Their neighbors drive Teslas and send kids to private schools. Suddenly, that six-figure salary feels like pocket change. The cost of keeping up becomes its own source of anxiety. Investment anxiety hits the wealthy particularly hard. When you have serious money, every financial decision feels massive. Should you put money in real estate or stocks? What if the market tanks tomorrow? What if you pick the wrong financial advisor? Poor people worry about paying bills. Rich people worry about losing everything they've built. Many wealthy individuals develop what psychologists call wealth anxiety disorder. They become obsessed with protecting their money. Some check their portfolios multiple times per day. Others hire teams of financial experts, then worry constantly about whether those experts are doing their jobs correctly. The irony? All this worrying often leads to worse financial decisions. Let's not forget the comparison trap. Rich people hang out with other rich people. When your neighbor buys a yacht, you suddenly feel inadequate with your measly vacation home. When your business partner's investment doubles, your steady 7% return feels pathetic. Wealth creates its own competitive environment where enough is never actually enough. The weirdest part? Many millionaires report feeling financially insecure despite having more money than 99% of the population. Their definition of enough keeps moving upward as their wealth grows. But here's what's really interesting about how rich people think about money differently. We've established that getting rich doesn't magically erase money worries, but something does shift when you have serious wealth. The question is what? The biggest change isn't about buying more stuff. It's about time horizons. Poor people think about next week's groceries. Middle-class folks worry about next month's mortgage. The wealthy, they're planning moves 20 years out. Jeff Bezos once said he makes decisions based on what will matter in a decade, not what's urgent today. That's luxury money can buy, the freedom to think long-term instead of scrambling for short-term fixes. When you're not stressed about paying rent, your brain can actually focus on building something bigger. Then there's the options game. Money doesn't buy happiness directly, but it buys choices. And choices are everything. Don't like your job? Quit tomorrow. Want to live somewhere else? Pack your bags. Your kid needs expensive medical treatment? Done, no questions asked. This flexibility changes how you move through the world. Most people feel trapped by circumstances. The wealthy feel like they're playing a completely different game where the rules are more forgiving. But here's where it gets interesting. After a certain point, wealthy people stop caring about accumulating more toys. The third Ferrari doesn't spark the same joy as the first one. Instead, they become obsessed with something else entirely: legacy and impact. Look at Bill Gates. He could buy anything, yet he spends his time trying to eliminate malaria. Warren Buffett lives in the same modest house he bought in 1958. These aren't accidents or publicity stunts. When you can afford everything, you realize most everything isn't worth having. The real shift happens in social dynamics too. Wealthy people often care more about status within their peer group than flashy displays for everyone else. It's not about impressing the neighbors anymore, it's about respect from other successful people. That's why many billionaires dress surprisingly ordinary. The guy in jeans and a hoodie at Starbucks might be worth more than everyone else in the building combined. Well, there's also the responsibility factor. Serious wealth brings serious decisions. Which charities deserve funding? How do you raise kids who aren't spoiled? What happens to your business when you're gone? These aren't problems most people face, but they're very real stress points for the wealthy. The wealthy also discover that money is just a tool, not the end goal. It's like having a really good hammer, useful for building something, but pretty boring to just stare at all day. The excitement comes from what you can create or accomplish with it. And the weird part is how normal everything becomes. That's the paradox nobody talks about. You adapt to wealth faster than you'd expect. The mansion becomes just your house. The private jet becomes just transportation. Your baseline shifts, and suddenly you're back to being, well, human. Makes sense, right? But this raises an uncomfortable question about human nature itself. If even unlimited money can't permanently satisfy us, what's really driving our happiness? Here's where things get really interesting. Scientists have been studying money and happiness for decades, and what they found might surprise you. There's something called the Easterlin paradox, named after economist Richard Easterlin, who discovered it back in the 1970s. He noticed that once people hit a certain income level, adding more money barely moves the happiness needle at all. The magic number keeps getting debated, but most research points to somewhere around $75,000 a year. After that, diminishing returns. You could go from $75,000 to $750,000, and your day-to-day happiness might barely budge. Wild, right? Then there's this thing called hedonic adaptation. Fancy name for a simple concept: we get used to stuff fast. Remember your first smartphone? Felt revolutionary for maybe 2 weeks, then it became normal. Same thing happens with wealth. That mansion feels incredible for a few months, then it's just home. The Ferrari becomes Tuesday's commute. Your brain literally adjusts to your new reality and starts taking it for granted. But here's the kicker. While rich people don't get much happier from extra money, they also don't get much sadder when they lose some. The adaptation works both ways. This explains why lottery winners often return to their baseline happiness levels within a year or two. Their brains just adjust. American cities prove this point beautifully. Tech workers in San Francisco make twice what teachers in Ohio earn, but they're not twice as happy. Why? Cost of living eats up that extra income faster than you can say avocado toast. A six-figure salary sounds impressive until rent takes half of it. What actually makes people happy long-term? Relationships top every single study. Not casual friendships either, but deep, meaningful connections. Personal growth comes second. Learning new skills, overcoming challenges, becoming better versions of ourselves. Money can't buy either of these directly. Ancient philosophers figured this out thousands of years ago without conducting a single survey. Aristotle talked about eudaimonia, which roughly translates to human flourishing. Not pleasure, not wealth, but living according to your values and reaching your potential. Buddhists have preached detachment from material desires for centuries. Even Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, who literally had access to the entire Roman Empire's wealth, wrote about how external riches meant nothing compared to inner peace. Modern psychology just gave us the data to prove what wise people always knew. Values beat wealth every time. Purpose trumps possessions. Connection matters more than collections. The research gets even more specific. Studies show that spending money on experiences creates longer-lasting happiness than buying things. Spending money on others makes people happier than spending on themselves. Time feels more valuable than money once basic needs are covered. This creates an uncomfortable truth for anyone chasing wealth as their primary goal. The very thing you think will solve your problems might leave you feeling surprisingly empty once you get it. But why does this emptiness hit so hard for successful people? Here's the truth nobody talks about: chasing money for money's sake is like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You can pour all you want, but something essential keeps leaking out. Take John D. Rockefeller, once the richest man in America. By his 50s, he'd accumulated more wealth than most countries. But here's the kicker: he was miserable. Stress had destroyed his health, he couldn't sleep, and his hair fell out from anxiety. The man who could buy anything couldn't buy peace of mind. When reporters asked what would make him happy, his answer was brutal: just one more dollar. That's the wealth paradox in action. The very thing we think will solve our problems often creates new ones. Well, why does this happen? When your entire identity becomes tied to accumulating wealth, you lose sight of what actually makes life meaningful. Rich people often describe feeling like they're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. More money means more investments to track, more decisions to make, more ways to potentially lose it all. Then there's the social isolation that wealth can bring. How do you know if people like you for who you are or what you have? Many wealthy individuals struggle with genuine relationships because trust becomes complicated when everyone knows your net worth. But here's where it gets interesting. The happiest wealthy people share one surprising trait: they've figured out that money is just a tool, not the destination. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. He drives his own car and eats at McDonald's. Makes sense, right? He found what truly mattered to him and stuck with it. Let's not forget the research backing this up. Studies consistently show that after your basic needs are covered, additional income has diminishing returns on happiness. A Harvard study followed people for over 80 years and found that good relationships were the strongest predictor of life satisfaction. Not wealth, not fame, not career success. And the weird part is, many millionaires instinctively know this. That's why so many turn to philanthropy. Bill Gates didn't find his greatest satisfaction in building Microsoft's fortune. He found it in giving that fortune away to solve global problems. The act of contributing to something bigger than yourself provides a fulfillment that another zero in your bank account simply can't match. The most content-wealthy people treat money like oxygen, essential but not something you think about constantly when you have enough. They focus on experiences, relationships, and leaving a positive impact. They understand that true wealth includes health, meaningful work, strong connections, and the ability to contribute to causes they care about. This brings us full circle to why so many people feel empty despite financial success. They've been climbing a ladder only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall the entire time. The real lesson: money can solve money problems, but it can't solve human problems. True richness comes from knowing the difference.